Hey everyone, how are you doing today? I'm Kirsty and welcome to K-Beth Bookish if you are new to my channel, and today we are looking at my March reading wrap-up. These are the physical books that I read. I also have a fair few ebooks and one audiobook, two audiobooks to talk about. March was a pretty fantastic month for me. Statistics wise, I finished 10 books, which is the most I've done in any month so far. I DNF'd one book. I read 3,111 pages. That would have been a lot higher, but I did read a fair number. I think I read like 4 graphic novels this month, and obviously they are going to lower the number of pages. And yeah, I read a lot more physical ebooks this month, so that was good. And I actually got through some library books. I'm going to start with my DNF, and that was My Ride or Die, Leslie Cohen. I just did not enjoy this book. I put it on one night, I couldn't sleep, so I thought, well, if I put an audiobook on, maybe it'll help me get to sleep a bit quicker, and it did. But I listened to it for about 3 nights in a row. I got about a third of the way through the book, and all that had happened in that entirety was we had 2 girls going on about how they're not happy with their lives and how men suck. One of them was knowingly lusting after a married man and wanted him to leave his wife for her. The other one was just like, oh, I just want to go around and sleep with everybody again because I miss those days when I was hot and pretty and got to go all around the world and have sex with this man and that man, and I don't need a man to tie me down. And yeah, as you can tell, I got very fed up very quickly of these characters and went, nah. There is no rating for that book. It was just simply a DNF, and that one will be going on the I will never go back to pile. So coming into our actual 10 books that I completed, I am going to start with number 10 and number 9 because they're in the same series. And these were Flying Witch Volumes 1 and 2 by Chihiro, Ishizuka. I really wanted to love these, and I did enjoy them, don't get me wrong. I will continue the series. I just didn't fall in love quite as much as I was wanting to. We basically follow this teenage girl who is a witch, and she moves in with relatives so that she can practice and develop her skills. However, we don't really kind of see any background for her. We just kind of get thrown into it. We don't really know yet, like, she's supposed to keep it secret that she's a witch, yet so far everyone she's met has been told and knows. And I don't know, it just kind of felt a bit like, well, how are witches about? How does magic work in this world? Why does magic work? And if it does, and if magic is known about, why are witches having to hide? And there were just so many unanswered questions, and the characters themselves, I like the little girl that comes into it and decides she's now going to be a witch. That was cute. But for the most part, I've not really been, like, hooked in. I do quite like the cat, her familiar. He's cute and adorable, but then again, he's a cat, so he's gonna be. Volume 2 scored slightly lower than Volume 1 because Volume 1 was quite good with the setup. Volume 2 just felt a bit of a filler. So Volume 2, which was at number 10, came in at 6.36, which was a 3.5. And Volume 1 was 6.45, which was also a 3.5. So like I said, they're not bad. It just didn't wow me. Then coming in at number 8, we have Weird Sisters by Terry Pratchett, which is book 2 in the Witches series as part of the Discworld series. Mechanics of the world are wacky and crazy, and half the time I have no idea what's going on. He has a way with words, and just so many quotes and so many scenes were fantastic. And I did do a fair bit of highlighting in this one. I've written notes, and I did enjoy this one a lot more than the first book, which was Equal Rights. And I think it's because I really love the characters of Nanny Ogg and Granny Weatherwax. Like, Margaret is okay, but I prefer the other two, and when they start bantering, it's hilarious and I love it. It takes a while to get through these, and it feels like a slog. Even though there are moments of pure genius and gold and I sit there howling with laughter, it might be 60 pages before the next one does it. And I don't find that I consistently enjoy them. And like I said, the world mechanics can be very confusing at times. And some of the nods, because like this one contains a lot of Shakespeare references. And if you're not a fan of Shakespeare, it just becomes very difficult to keep up with everything. And yeah, I'm still not convinced yet if I want to continue the Discworld series. I do have the last 2 Witches books, so I will give those a go. And I do have Monsters Regiment as well. So I will give them all a go. But I've got a feeling that they might be my final foray into Discworld, because this is take 2 and has not been going great. So we shall see. So that was number 8 on the on March reads, and got 6.71, which was 3.5 stars. Next up we have one that I started well over a year ago. I put down and then just didn't pick it up until about 3 weeks ago, and then finally I finished it, and that is Vengeful by Ve Schwab. Now you might be wondering why this is so far down the list, because this is only number 7, and you might be like, what, Kirsty? You put Ve Schwab that low? And yes I did, because this is the 8th book of Schwab's that I have read, and it is by far the most disappointing, because A, we had a ton of new characters introduced, none of which I gave a crap about, to be honest. B, the new villain, Marcella, I just found to be exhausting and vapid, and I just had literally zero shits about her. And C, she did dirty to Eli. Eli deserved so much better than the tiny snippets that he got in this book. Like in the first book, I still didn't like him very much, but the dynamic between him and Victor and everything that was going on between them and getting to hear about their backstories and things, I loved it. This book, if you've read it, you probably know why I'm so mad about how Schwab handled Eli. And quite honestly, I found this to be a real slog. It could have been half the thickness and I would have been happy. But the addition of all the extra characters, and it felt like there were plot lines that didn't need to be in there. And then most of the characters that we'd spent an entire book growing to love and develop and get a connection with weren't in there anymore, or were barely in there. And it just kind of, I don't know, I just got left wanting so much more from this. So yeah, I was left very disappointed by this one. But as always with Schwab, I did love her writing. I loved the characters that were already established. I liked their continuation. And I always really enjoy her dialogue. Like, she writes dialogue very well. Some people come across very wooden when they write dialogue, whereas this always comes out quite natural. So there are elements that I did enjoy, but as I said, compared to the first book that I absolutely loved and would love to reread, I kind of feel like this one I could have happily skipped. And this one got a 7, so it did come out as a 4, but only just came out as a 4-star. So I did enjoy it, and I would read it again, but I was quite disappointed, and it's my least favourite so far of all the Schwabs that I have read. So I'm really hoping the 3rd book's gonna give this one a happier outlook. The next book is the first of my actual ebooks. So the mangas, yes, they were technically ebooks, but this is actually a novel, and that is book 2. No, it's not. It's book 3 in the Skullduggery Pleasant series. This is where things start to get a little bit confusing. So I read book 2, 3 and 4 in the Skullduggery series, but of those I found book 3 was my least of the favourites so far, and that was Faceless Ones. And with this one, again, it got 4 stars, but it just wasn't as good as the first 2. It didn't build the characters up in the same way, and I just kind of felt it lost its way a tiny bit. And yeah, I've almost entirely forgotten it already, because I've maybe reading 3 in a row was a bad idea, but it's also, it tells me that I didn't enjoy it as much as the other two, because the other two I can remember what happens in them and I can remember like the key things, whereas that one's kind of just blurred in the middle and I'm thinking like of bits and I'm like, was that in this one or was that in the other ones? So yeah, brought in Fletcher, who is a teleporter, and he was quite cool and I'm intrigued to see where they're going to go with him. But yeah, it wasn't really anything special. So I'm just going to kind of give my scores and move on. And that one, so number 6, that got 7.36, which was a 4-star. The next book was The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly by Sunmi Huang. This was such a beautiful, cute story. I think I talked about it in my vlog, so if you've seen it in the vlog, you'll know that I was very emotional reading this, and it essentially follows this hen who all she dreams of is being free and raising her own baby, and she is tired of laying eggs for these farmers that always take them away. So she refuses to lay any more eggs, and then an adventure ensues where she almost gets cold, she escapes, and there she meets a duck who sort of looks after her a little bit. And then he finds a mate, and one night the hen overhears some screaming and squawking and assumes that the weasel that has been like trying to kill them all has taken someone. But shortly after, she then finds a nest with an egg on it. And she sits on the egg and she essentially hatches the egg and raises the baby. And I'm not going to say any more than that because you need to read it. But it is a beautiful story about protection, freedom, motherhood, loving your child, even if they're not what you expect them to be and they don't turn out how you were expecting. And it just had such a beautiful story about acceptance, but it also had a side story of survival and defying the odds. And it was just a very, very, very short, but very, very poignant story. And what I like is that at the back, it also has a website where you can go and get loads of like teaching resources. So I like that this could be integrated into school quite easily and be a text that you can use to analyse. And I feel like this would be a really good one to add onto school curriculum. I mean, it won't, because it's not a male white author from the 1800s. So it won't get looked at, but I feel it deserves to be. And it sucks that it isn't, but it's definitely one that I will read again. It's one that I think I will definitely buy for my children. And I think it's also one that whether you are a child, a teenager or an adult, anyone can read this and gain something from it. So this one came in at number 5 of my books for the month and got 7.86, which is a very solid 4-star. Not quite a 4.5, but not far off. I didn't get any 5-star reads this month, so now we're entering the highest books, and the last 4 were all 4.5 stars. But the lowest of those 4.5s was book 4 in the Skullduggery Pleasant series, which was Dark Days. Between book 3 and 4, we had a time jump of about a year, and something happened at the end of the 3rd book. I'm not going to say what. And then at the start of the 4th book, it had been a year later and they were at the point where they were ready to go and do this thing and get this person. And it was like, I kind of wanted to see more of the build-up. I would have liked to have seen how Valkyrie adapted through the year, watch her training and grow. And like, she starts training with this new character and I'm like, you know, we're a year in at this point. I would have liked to have seen more of their development and seen more of him training her and more of her learning about this side of her abilities. And we kind of didn't get that. We just kind of got where she'd already been doing it for a while. She was quite comfortable with it. She'd grasped the concepts. And it's like, I do understand why the time skip was necessary. If you've read the series, you know why. But I just felt, And Skullduggery himself was just really annoying me in this book. The dynamic between him and Valkyrie changed. And I was a bit like, But that being said, the humour was still very much there. I giggled a lot. The poor Bentley, every single book, it gets destroyed in one way or another, and I feel so sorry for it. and I am very excited to see where it's going to go. Things were developing that are things that haven't been in the series so far, and I'm quite excited to see what's going to happen with those next. That one came in at number 4 and it got a solid 8, so that was just on the 4.5. And then number 3 was Playing with Fire, which is the second book in the series. I thoroughly enjoyed this one because by this point, you know, we'd already met the characters, Valkyrie and Skullduggery. This was really showing how their bond had grown. Valkyrie was starting to really step into her abilities, and we had some really cool new bad guys come in who added great content, and Valkyrie now has about 4 or 5 people who have declared her as their nemesis and now want to kill her, and it's just so funny watching these guys squabble over who gets to kill her and things. And I just found it really good because she's now starting to really grow confident in herself. She's growing confident in her abilities. She can tell that Skullduggery trusts her, and there were a lot of really awesome developments in this book, and the storyline itself was really good. I was really interested in these like 3, was it 3 or 4? 3 of these killers coming into town to do some stuff, and I just thought it was really interesting because you got to see each of the main characters like have a moment to shine and like meet someone who was kind of like their main adversary, and it was really awesome. This one got an 8.14, so again, also 4.5 stars. We then have book 2, Night Shadow by Sebastian de Castell, which is book 2 in the Greatcoat series, and holy shit, did I love this. I do have a couple of issues, and I'll do the issues first. First of all, Vastilath Halatu, or whatever it bloody well is, if I hear it one more time, I might just scream, because there are only so many times that you can hear a phrase being repeated and repeated and repeated before you want to strangle the author and be like, please come up with a new thing. So there was a bit of repetition. I did find that it dragged in a few places, and the plot itself I was a little bit bored of, not gonna lie. The whole political turmoil and all of this, like someone wants to assassinate this person and that person and all of that kind of style of things, I'm not interested. However, these characters are some of the best ever, and the 3 main characters I absolutely adore. I will say Falkio still kind of annoys me a little bit. However, that being said, the rest of the book was incredible, and as always, the narration by Joe Jameson, he can do no wrong as far as I am concerned. But Brasty went from last book I was a little bit irritated by him to this book I absolutely fell in love with him, cackled my ass off multiple times, and towards the end of the book there's a bit where he comes in and just, it had me howling with laughter. And just the way they're like, it's always Kest that's like, shut up, Brasty. And I just love how their dynamic works. Kest is still absolutely my favourite character in this series. And he only got better as the story went on. And we got to see more vulnerabilities with all of the characters, and I loved that. We actually got to see them be human, like even Brasty. We saw a couple of cracks appear, and it was very beautiful and had me tearing up at one point. And I never thought at book 1 that Brasty would have me crying for him, but it did. So yeah, I think with this book, the emotions were a lot higher. The plot was maybe a bit weaker than it had been in the first book until the end. Like the last quarter of the book was, I could not stop listening. I didn't want to put it down. I loved it. But the middle sort of third of the book, I would say, was very draggy for me. It kind of just felt like, oh, they're travelling here, now they're travelling there. Now they're travelling here, now they're travelling there. And it just kind of felt boring and slow. But the beginning of it and the end were so good that it kind of made up for it. I have a feeling that both book 3 and 4 are going to hit that 5-star mark. That one was 8.21. So again, 4.5 stars. And then that leads me on to my final book, which is a graphic novel. And that was When Stars Are Scattered by Victoria Jameson and Omar Mohammed. This tells the story of two young boys in a Kenyan refugee camp. They are Somalian refugees. They were separated from their mum, their dad was killed, and they've spent the last 10 years or 8 years in this refugee camp, and it just shows their day-to-day lives, how they kind of have been adopted by this elderly lady, and it shows them going through school. One of the brothers has a disability, so he can't talk. You know, it talks about how life is even more difficult when you've got a disabled child, because he can't talk. He's pretty much non-verbal except for the word ohoyo, which is mother, if I remember rightly, and he also has seizures. It shows the struggles with where they look to the UN as these people who are going to save them, and then gradually over time they start to wonder if they are as grand as they say they are, or as it's been portrayed. It shows the struggles to get accepted to go abroad and move to a new country. It shows the struggles with school. It shows how girls don't get the same opportunities. And yeah, it was a really insightful look into what life is like in a refugee camp, but presented in such a way that it's accessible for everyone. And this is aimed at middle grade and children. This is a very, very inspiring story, and is definitely one that I think a lot of kids should be introduced to, and especially as it is difficult to approach these kind of topics with younger audiences in a way that they will understand the severity of it and realise this is real, this is happening. And I think this does it beautifully. And then at the back it does give an update, and it shows photos of the actual, like, the people that are inspired by the story. Well, it's basically, it's an autobiography in comic format, and so it shows photos of the individuals. And the only issue that I had with this is in the afterword it focused only on the brothers, and it was like, well, I wanted to know about the other girl. Because there were two main girls in it, and one of them, her family got accepted, and I wanted to know a little bit more about her as well. Like, did she get to be a lawyer? Did that one get to be a mother? Did they stay? His friend Jerry, I think. It doesn't say anything about him. I want to know, how did he get on as well? And it kind of felt like, you know, we'd spent all of the time learning about all of these kids as well as the two main boys, but then we didn't really get an update on where they're at now. And I would have just loved a little bit more, like 1 or 2 more paragraphs just saying Jerry's now doing this girl Hassan, Nimo and Mariam, I really wanted to know what happened with them. And I just felt like, as fantastic as the rest of it was, at the end it was like, I just would have liked to have just known where they're at now and how they're doing. But yeah, this was my top rated book, which was 8.29, so not far off a 5-star, and is definitely one that I will recommend. However, despite all that, I do have a book of the month, and it's not always my top rated book that ends up being book of the month, and that is the case here. And it's probably not going to be that surprising from how I've been talking and how I just spoke, but my book of the month for March is Night Shadow by Sebastian de Castell. So that's going to enter in the end of year showdown. It's going to be put in my bullet journal in a minute. And yeah, I'm super excited to finish that series. However, I won't be finishing it this month because I already have 15 books planned out, and my brain has already decided it doesn't want to read those. It wants to reread the Fever series by Cara Marie Moaning. And I'm like, for God's sake, why do you do this to me? So we shall see how the month goes. I may pick it up, I may not. But yeah, that is my wrap up for March that ended up being a lot longer than I expected. And yeah, what was your favourite book of the month for March? Let me know in the comments, and I am going to go. I hope you guys are good. I hope you're staying safe, and until next time, I will see you later. Bye.